The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Well, welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. I'm Kevin Sylvester along with Paul Peck, BuffaloSportsPage.com, along with the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti, back from his hiatus, vacation. I can't believe you get vacation.
It's forced.
Forced. Right, because I would assume you go on vacation and you're just studying contracts and salaries like you always do.
Yeah, the laptop was definitely with me. We were, significant time change. We went abroad, so it was a task and a chore, but we kept up as we can. Luckily, as we're going to talk about here, there weren't any major splashes in terms of contracts, so we dodged that bullet. But yeah, good to get away for a little bit. Good to be back and plenty to talk about here.
You went to Europe to study transfer agreements.
That's right.
Premier Soccer.
That's what I was thinking. Like, if you went
time.
to Europe, was it all about the soccer and cricket? We don't see any cricket salaries.
I'll tell you what, there was definitely no baseball over there. There's no nothing. I mean, you flip through a channel and you go to a sports bar, which really don't exist, by the way, where I was, but it was thin picking for sports content over there. So I was on Twitter and kind of keeping up with the usuals as I could, but I couldn't make it over there. Being the baseball guy that I am.
That's true.
I have problems going to the West Coast, right? Trying to keep things in the East.
Yeah,
you feel like
trying to prepare yourself for 4:00 baseball games, right? That always throws me on any time I go to the West Coast.
Yeah,
5:00 Monday Night Football games.
Right.
Or you wake up Sunday morning and it's 10 a.m. and the game's on. You're like, whoa.
Very strange.
I love that. I love soccer in the morning.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of West Coast, we can start with a West Coast NFL team.
Yeah, a few of them.
Two of them, actually, whose big stars continue to not be in camp with there was some indication that Aaron Donald may be close, but nothing as we record this. So what's the latest on, we'll start with Aaron Donald and then we'll go to Khalil Mack.
Yeah. I read the same as you yesterday. I think the last 24 hours, there's some hope. I think, a couple of the major sources sort of alluded to the fact that the negotiations are there, the numbers are there. Look, the Rams don't have a lot of leeway right now with their cap. So my thinking in terms of this getting to the finish line is that there's going to have to be some moves, right? Some cause and effect here just to get this thing done, because when you're talking about the magnitude of contract this is going to be, it's going to be front-loaded. Right? I mean, Aaron Donald is going to, and I sort of had this conversation on Twitter yesterday, this isn't about $150 million, right? This isn't a total value kind of asset here. I need $70 million guaranteed, and I need it in 3 years because I'm the best defensive player, arguably, of all time, that's sort of how this is laying out. And, there's really no denying that I'm going to be on top of these plateaus in terms of average salary and guarantees and all those contract factors we talk about on this podcast all the time. But there's no denying it. But in order to get it done, you're not going to spread this thing out over 6, 7, 8 years and expect him to agree to that, just because we've seen that happen. We've seen the Julio Jones situation. We've seen the Earl Thomas situation in the last month here, where these elite players get to those backsides of the contract and they're miserable.
The teams don't want to do any deals anymore.
So this is the point I was having on Twitter yesterday, and there were a couple of negative comments back to me about it. My tweet was basically, the only thing that matters here is $70 million to Aaron Donald. That's it. That's the most defensive guaranteed money ever given out. That's Von Miller, right? Aaron Donald is certainly Von Miller, maybe even then some. He's younger. He's been more productive. He's on a better team right now, right? I mean, all the signs are there. So to me, that's a no-brainer comment. It's all about the guaranteed money, and that's really all that should matter. And if if they want to sign him to a 3-year, $70 million contract, I think he would agree to that. But it's not about 6 and 7 years. It's not about the back end of this contract. This is a guy who's going to be 30, 31 years old in 4 years, right? In between there somewhere. That matters to a defensive player. Look at what happened with Ndamukong Suh. It matters to even the best players.
It better matter to the teams too, because the likelihood of the production still being there at that age is not as good.
But we're going to talk a little bit about control here, because you've got a guy like Aaron Donald and a guy like Aaron Rodgers, right? Kind of the same guy on each side of the ball here right now. Rodgers obviously being a little older, but this isn't about getting $150 million where half is guaranteed. This is about controlling your future. Right, this is the best defensive player in football, and sure, the Rams want him for 4 years, and I'm sure he wants to be there with the prospects of this team, being Super Bowl bound in the next few years. But after that, he's got to be able to control his destiny. You do not want him locked in six, 7 years down the road, if the Rams, fall off, this is going to be a short window. Just the way these young, look at Jared Goff's going to need a contract next year. You've already locked in the wide receiver. You've locked in, Todd Gurley as well. So the money's being shelled out sort of left and right here, and that's not going to be sustainable over a long term. So there's a short window for the Rams. Aaron Donald is sort of the second last piece of that puzzle with Jared Goff next year. But all of these players are going to want to be in this short window and then have the control to get themselves out of it. Because if you're locked in, you're Julio Jones, right? And you're even worse, you're Earl Thomas. You're locked in on a bad team, right? Seattle's on the backside of their window. It's obvious. They're going to be an average team this year. That's where Aaron Donald shouldn't want to be. And that's not a money thing. That's a contract control thing. And to me, that's just as important as the $70 million guaranteed rate.
It was fascinating going over this. Paul, you and I can relate to this, going back to the mid to late 90s. It was always about the years, right? The security of having a job so you can get paid. Now security's shifted to guaranteed money now,
right?
In the National Football
League. And then freedom.
Right.
And that's so interesting because, like you said, Kevin, in every sport, it's always been about the long term, the headlines are the 10-year deals.
Show me the love. Show me that you want me, right?
And now the players have realized, no, I want 3 years because then I can figure out where I want to go again. And if this isn't the right place or they don't want to pay me, I'm going to beat them to the punch to the point where they cut me because I'm making too much money.
Loyalty is gone.
Right.
It's been gone for quite some time, but it's just fast because I was thinking about Bruce Smith in the same position, Aaron Donald here. I was just thinking about, how it was about a long-term deal to lock him up so he could stay. And then really Reggie White was kind of the first guy, right, that moved on from loyalty and got a big payday to go to the Green Bay Packers. And that was the shift, I think. And the start of the shift anyway. Someone had to be kind of the first, and that was the start of the shift. And now it's just even more the way contracts are structured, and they figured out the cap through CBAs. The loyalty is in guaranteed dollars, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but it's not the 8-year deal anymore. That doesn't matter. It's how much, as you said, what the guaranteed money is, and that's the $70 million for Aaron Donald.
It is. And when you're an elite player like we're discussing here, that is the one thing that you should be demanding because everything else is going to be there for you. You're going to be the highest paid player. You're going to have the top guarantees. It's going to be there. But control over the structure is the one thing that the players have not been able to get from the teams. They haven't been able to win that battle yet. They haven't gotten the fourth-year guarantee. No one has yet. So that's really next in terms of maybe an Aaron Rodgers deal, even though he's 34 years old. But to me, it is about controlling your destiny, understanding that at any point in time, or even more sophisticatedly, understanding the window your team might have, right, and reflecting the contract around it. I mean, the Rams, like I said, there might be a 3 to 4 year window, and to me, that is exactly where Aaron Donald's true guarantees should be. If he can go and get a little guaranteed money in a fourth year, 18, 19, 20, 21. I think that's reasonable because I don't think the Rams can sustain this current roster outside of that. It's
because they're going to have to pay Goff, as you mentioned. It's every team that doesn't have to pay big money to a quarterback has flexibility to do things that most teams can't.
And here's the other end of that, and it's really not being discussed yet, but if Aaron Donald does get done this year, and we've talked about Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley, and there's been others, they've let some defensive players go to sort of make this work, but Jared Goff might be SOL here. Jared Goff might be on a Kirk Cousins path here.
Franchise
yes,
tags.
A few of them. He might have to be sort of the brunt of this joke, right? He might have to be the guy that says,
So
we'll
Jared Goff's got 2 more years left, then the team option.
That's right.
And then franchise tags.
That's right.
Yeah, but it's worked out for Kirk Cousins financially.
It not only has it worked out for the teams too. I think the Redskins are probably pretty happy with how that worked out. They didn't win.
Right?
They didn't make it work,
and they didn't get locked into paying a ridiculous amount of money to a player that they clearly didn't think was worth it.
That's right, and it's an awful system for the player.
Yeah.
It's an awful system,
right?
Because of the lack of guarantee, because of things like injuries that could come in and really destroy that whole system. But it's there, and teams are abusing it. The problem with it is that teams are abusing it.
Yeah. All right. So how does any of this?
Well, that's a negotiation point in the CBA, though. You can't say they're abusing it. They're using a tool that was collectively bargained
They're
by
using it
the
in a way
Players
that
Association.
wasn't anticipated, though. They're using it as a way. They're using it as a model to build their team, rather than a way to hold a placeholder as a placeholder.
But that
which is what it was
happens with
intended to.
every CBA,
It's just good
doesn't
business.
it?
Look at, I'm
Right.
not knocking anybody here. It's good business, but it's less control for the players, and that's the whole point.
Right.
They're losing even more control because of that.
Right. All right. So the other key guy that we're talking about, and you throw around with Donald, one of the rising already great defensive players in the league. Khalil Mack's not that far off, and how much of what's going on with Donald is going on here. Now we do know that Khalil crossed a mark where he's now being fined $814,000 for every missed game, so he's missed one.
No way he's paying that. By
No,
the way.
I
Come
know,
on.
but it was one of those milestones where potentially you could have said he might have come back in if he didn't want to miss it. So where is this at? It has been incredibly quiet.
Yeah, and that's not good news for Khalil Mack. I don't think that's he's been way behind the back burner in comparison to Aaron Donald and even Aaron Rodgers. I think those two have had more publicly visible negotiations where Mack is really in the background here. And that might be an agent's choice. They're just sort of trying to wait in the wings because they're making a point that they really are going to stay the heck away until this thing gets done.
Do you think he's waiting for Donald to set a parameter?
I don't think that's good business on his part. I don't, because statistically, Mack had a bit of a setback season last year. Statistically speaking, so he doesn't have the leverage that Aaron Donald has. Really even closely. Mack's more of like an $18 million valuation, where Donald's well over $20 million. Just numbers the numbers.
Because he also plays a position where he's an anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
Donald being a pass rushing D tackle, those are don't. There might be three of them in the world that exist. Not that Khalil isn't a great pass rushing outside linebacker DN, but there are others there.
I think you nailed it. I think Donald is just sort of an anomaly.
Yeah.
So I think keeping his distance from that negotiation probably makes sense. He's more in line just with the Von Miller contract. I think that's the model, and it's 3 years later, so you got to pay me more than that. That's it.
Obviously, because of his ties to where we are in Buffalo, which is where Khalil went to school. There's it's always a topic of discussion amongst people, and there's a lot of people in this town that know Khalil, and the conversation I've had with people is like, geez, what's going on? Is he mad? Is he angry? Like, why? People want to know why, because most of the people that in Buffalo that know Khalil don't necessarily know him as that kind of guy, although they knew him as the college Khalil. I don't know that any of us could claim we know him as the NFL star Khalil.
So my take on the quietness is that there could very well be trade conversations happening. To me, that is always a signal. It's a red flag. When things get quiet.
Did John Gruden walk in there and go, we were awful on defense with him. Why do I want to blow my team structure up to pay him?
Like I said, he
could have been for sure. Yeah.
I think he had a setback a little bit last year. This isn't helping. The holdout's probably not helping because Gruden's got to go out there and win games right now.
Right.
He's certainly not going to be ready to do that anytime soon with him. But to me, quiet always means there's things going on in the background.
Yeah.
And if they were negotiating, you'd hear about it.
Sure.
Agents love to talk.
Yeah.
Agents love to put themselves out there. It's just a negotiating tactic to get themselves on Twitter and talk a little bit. So that's not happening, whereas as it is with Donald. To me, that signals that maybe there's some calls being made. I think there's been 3-4 teams that make a lot of sense out there.
Right. We talked about Kevin and I talked about this on one of our podcasts last week as we tried
fake Adam Schefter on Twitter said they're talking with the Bills. That's fake Adam.
That is where it all starts.
Right. We were trying to surmise what the market value would be for a Khalil Mack. Kevin, throw out what we talked about, and then we'll see what Mike thinks.
Well, I just on that hypothetical for the Bills, let's say.
Yep.
The player they drafted this year at linebacker, Tremaine Edmonds, right? I mean, his first-round pick and another first. I think he's 2 firsts at least.
Or the player they drafted in the first round last year, Tre'Davious White.
No way I do that deal. I think White's too good.
I've heard the Bills as one of the teams as well, and I don't see that as a fit. I know that it's a logical fit because of where he played college and things like that, but to me, those two guys are untouchable that you just mentioned. Totally untouchable.
I don't think Edmonds is untouchable.
Untouchable.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so because he hasn't played for you. White has and proved that this guy is an all-pro caliber cornerback. The other guy, his upside's tremendous, but they do play different positions. You're not going to put Mack in at your Mike.
Correct.
You're going to put you'd have to trade Hughes
or
right?
release him.
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna get rid of another pass rushing end. Now, interesting. Kevin and I sort of talked about, what would the Raiders want? Well, is it a 1 and a star? Is it 2 1s? Is it a 1 and a 2? But I'll throw you an interesting response to that given to me by someone who works in the NFL, and they said the price isn't going to be as high as you think it is because part of the price to trade for him is turning around and giving him a $100 million contract with 50 to 60 guaranteed. That subtracts from the price of the trade. You buy that?
Yeah. No.
You buy it, but everybody has to do that, right? I mean, there's not like that's one team that has leverage over another unless you've got cap space like the Browns, who probably should be in this conversation, by the way.
Sure.
Let me tell you a team, maybe it's a dark horse. I don't think it's a dark horse, but I think 2 firsts is exactly the price, and I think there's a team that has 2 firsts next year, and it's the Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great fit. Talk about Reggie White, right? I mean, I think it's a great fit. I think it's a team that, boy, I don't know where they stand right now, right? I think a lot of people are really upset with the Jordy Nelson, departure. That offense is maybe not quite where it needs to be with it for an Aaron Rodgers quarterback. They could use a splash. They've got an aging Clay Matthews who's on an expiring contract. There's just a lot of pieces that sort of make sense for
and a new general
splash
manager who has changed their philosophy. Because when Ted Thompson was there, he would have hung the phone up on the Raiders. Right?
He's not even working this time of year.
Well, I'm saying, but yeah, you're right. So now you have a new GM who is willing to listen to that phone call.
That's right. It's a bit of a new culture. They're maybe not as strong roster-wise as they've been in the past. They could probably use a splash like this, and they've got some assets to move draft-wise. So, to me, that's the team.
Interesting. And I can tell you from the little bit that I do know Khalil Mack, personally, I think he'd be fine playing in a place like Green Bay, which not everybody would be.
Right.
That comes from a smaller college, under the radar career up until getting to the NFL. He's not a guy who played in the SEC who demands the spotlight. That's not necessarily him. So
no, I do think though that's what's going on. I think that it's quiet because there's trade possibilities.
Interesting.
And Oakland might be entertaining those, and I do think there's some teams out there asking too.
If you were Oakland, both of you, would you trade him for 2 first-round picks?
I think you've almost backed yourself into a corner now where you have to. He's clearly not interested in coming back or not under the terms that you're talking to him unless you're going to – I mean, there's becomes a tipping point. We've seen this with guys over the years where you don't want to get rid of a guy, but you're never going to be able to sign him, and it becomes a distraction, and then you say, let me get what I can get for him. I think if you're the Raiders, you absolutely take 2 number 1s.
I agree. I think they're moving to a new stadium here. They're moving to a new city. I don't think I want to put $65 million guaranteed into this guy when I could use that to, maybe adjust my roster elsewhere. Where I think they're going to need a running back situation. They're going to need some help elsewhere. The secondary is going to have to get rebuilt again. It looks like it's tough to lose a guy who can pass rush like this, but. If you got 2 first, you can go get another one, right?
Yeah, and again, just reiterate, because I think it's important, and I think it's all part of this, that cash flow for the Raiders could be an issue in this as well, too.
Big time, yes. For me, everything starts with Derek Carr on the Raiders, because I've said it a few times on this show. He's got an out after this year, contract-wise. So if John Gruden's not in love with him, and they're moving to a new city, and they're going to start, sort of take this thing from the ground up, it could start with Derek Carr being on the way out. So, you lose Mack now, you lose Carr next year potentially. This thing might be a total rebuild by 2019.
That'll be exciting.
Well, you can't do that going to Vegas in your first year, can you?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know. If it's for the good of the team, right?
You don't want to go into a place like that in a brand new stadium with a team that you might win 4 games. That's the worst scenario.
Derek Carr had a bad 2017.
Yes,
he had a bad 2017.
And let me say this to you: for the same reason that you could blame Khalil Mack for not the whole team was bad in 2017. In 2016, they showed glimpses of what they all can be. The question is, did they lose? Did they fall off the track and have a bad 2017, or can they get back to where they were? 2016, Kevin and I had this debate. I thought Derek Carr was maybe the one quarterback in the league that I would have wanted if you gave me my choice of all of them.
There's no question, and that's why they paid him. There's no question. I mean, he looked the part.
How could he be on the brink of you wanting to get rid of him now?
I just want him to have a big rebound because I have a Derek Carr autographed rookie card.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Selfish.
All right. On the
darn right selfish. And I just want to say this too. I am disappointed that Ballers didn't go with the Vegas Raider theme because this year's did you see the debut?
I did not see the debut.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. They could have nailed that.
They could have nailed it. Anyways.
All right, speaking of the
You're
Packers,
missing out on a good show, Paul, if you're not watching Ballers.
No, I watch it. I just didn't watch the premiere this week. Speaking of the Packers, what's going on with Rodgers?
Oh, I don't think anything new, but it's still worth talking about because, for those who really haven't taken a deep dive into this situation and the negotiation process, they're getting real creative in Green Bay, real creative. And I think it's more from Rodgers' camp, but, I've read a few pieces and I've talked to some people recently that have sort of shed some light on this. But have you guys actually heard about these details that Rodgers has put together? Okay, so.
No, that's why you're here, Mike.
Short story here. Short story because we're on a time limit here.
We're not.
Basically, it's not just about going out and being $31 million a year, right? Surpassing Matt Ryan. Obviously, though, like I said, same thing with Aaron Donald. Aaron Rodgers is going to get his money, if and when he wants it, right? And we're at that point. But it's not just about that. He's asked for really specific things, and they're
like green M&Ms in his locker.
No, not like diva stuff.
Okay,
more of like the control that we've been discussing here, right? He has asked, or at least entertained the idea of an adjustable contract, which is pretty unbelievable, but it's also pretty impossible, right? Basically, what that means is if he's worth $31 million a year right now, and Jared Goff gets $33 million, or Marcus Mariota gets $33 million, Aaron Rodgers will have the ability to adjust and flex his deal to now make him the highest paid.
So almost a clause that says you must be by $100,000 the highest paid quarterback in average annual salary, whatever.
Time.
Right.
All right,
so
you know what?
Can
I just say that? I'm sorry. Really?
Really?
That's a cake and eating it too mode there.
Really?
Right?
He's awesome quarterback.
I've
interviewed him before, and he's in a golf setting, and it was right after actually when they lost, but he drew the play up in the in the huddle, and I talked to him about it, and he was cool about it. But you're Aaron Rodgers. We all know you're great. We don't need your paycheck to say you're the greatest in the league.
So here's the problem I have with it, because I'm with you a little bit. I sort of gawked at
I'm
it.
getting at, right?
I was extremely interested in it just from a creativity standpoint. That he'd even have the kind of the gall to put this out there and make it public. I mean, obviously this thing's out there.
Right.
Here's the thing. Who cares how much your average pay is, right? If they're really going to get specific about this, that means he's going to have a cash flow of that every year. Like, are you talking you want $31 million this year, $32 million next year? That's ridiculous. Right? Here's the other part of it. The second option was ownership stake, which I don't even know how that would work in Green Bay.
I don't think the league would let that happen.
Well, here's the thing.
Publicly owned.
They're publicly owned,
right?
So I'm not sure how that would work in Green Bay. But I did some digging, and if you remember, Tennessee offered this to Peyton Manning when the Indianapolis released Peyton Manning, and he was a free agent. The Titans actually offered this, and the league did not push back.
Really?
They did not push back. I mean, maybe they did internally, but in terms of public facing, it seemed as if this was an opportunity that was going to be entertained. So.
In that regard, I think he's brilliant. I think it's brilliant by his part.
Here's the problem,
yes,
from a financial standpoint and a number standpoint. The problem is any kind of ownership stake would be percentage-based, right?
Well, yeah.
And then you'd have to compensate him.
How do you account for that on the cap?
You'd have to compensate him for the cap. So if he owns 2% of the team, and the team's worth, $200 million, then your cap's already starting there. Then you'd have to pay him a base salary, right? So you'd have to add on to that. I don't know how you could financially make that work with your cap.
My only guess would be if you get an ownership stake that it becomes active upon retirement.
Okay,
but that's
so
still
like
a cap circumvention.
Deferred. Yeah, I'm not sure that's legal.
That's
you can't
still,
defer money in the NFL.
That's telling a guy at age 45 we're going to pay you $10 million, but play for $2 million now.
Right.
That's circumventing the cap.
That's baseball money.
Well, I think, because I thought about this with LeBron James, frankly.
Sure, yeah.
If he was going to stay in Cleveland, if there's a way to negotiate an ownership stake for him with the Cleveland Cavaliers. would have made sense for him
to
to stay, right? Yeah. And who knows, he may own that team someday. But anyway, if I were a player and an iconic player for a franchise, I would ask for the same damn thing. You want me to stay long-term? I want a piece of the team here. I'm responsible for the financial success of this team, and I'm thinking about my post-career, and I'm not going to have enough money to become a majority owner. It's just, unless you go strike oil and, whatever. I mean, he's going to make a ton of money.
As much as we talk about throwing these big numbers around, they're not ownership
and
numbers.
The only, he's in it now. He's got the leverage now to try to get a piece. When he's retired, there won't be the leverage. I'm surprised Peyton Manning isn't an owner of a team.
I think it's
right
coming.
now.
Yeah, I think
it's coming.
All right, well, fine. But, he could have had a time to go somewhere. Rodgers is where he wants to be. He's asked for it. See, now this, I think, is very sensible, and I totally get that from Aaron Rodgers.
You don't think
how it works on the cap? I don't know. Maybe
I think it's eventually going to happen. I think this is going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Not with Rodgers, because this is a public team. I can't even.
You don't think you could get 100,000 Packer shareholders to sell their shares just to get them to keep them happy?
Well, those are essentially worthless. You
$250 what are they, like $250 a share or something like that?
Yeah, but you can't resell it.
You can't resell it.
So it's basically worthless. Yeah, somebody actually, you're right. There's got to be some owner there, right?
Yeah, who
rakes in the profits.
No, it's the team itself, right? I mean, there is no singular owner. That's the whole bizarre setup.
What do they do with the profits?
They don't. They remain in the. I believe they remain in possession of the Packers organization. They don't pay dividends.
So everybody gets raises every year.
They churn it back into the stadium, or.
But teams do that anyways. Is my point.
Yeah,
there's so much damn money there.
Right. What's the need for it? Right.
Right.
Anyway, I agree with you. I think this has legs. And because of what I read with Peyton Manning and the Titans, it sure seems like it. The league was going to consider at least entertaining it. Look, there's a third piece here with Rodgers, which again I think could have legs, but man, it's a headache. So the next option that he's offered, or his agent has offered, is an adjustable cap again, but it's an adjustment based on the percentage of the cap. So as the league cap increases, which it's going to do every year here, he wants to be 20% of the cap every year. Again, though, I don't know how that's sustainable for the Packers, right? Because And there's two things. Number one, I don't know if that's sustainable to keep a roster around him, which is another whole other side of this, right? If Rodgers is really going to these levels for his contract, is this really going to be worth it? Are they going to win a damn thing at the end of this if he's this specific?
No.
Right. But we'll leave that out because that's pretty obvious here. But here's the thing. You can't just make an adjustment. You can't just restructure.
No, you'd have to have him sign 1 year contracts.
Every single time.
Yeah.
So you sign a 5-year deal. You got to sign it over again in the second year. You got to sign it over again in the third year. There's semantics. There's agent fees. I don't know that this is even worth anybody's time at all. Just franchise tag the guy at this point, right? Every year.
Yeah.
Every year. I mean, that's essentially what he's asking for is top money every year.
If those numbers are close to what he wants, then it makes a lot of sense. If he can get 20% of the cap by signing whatever the franchise tag number is, then do that.
You know what the fascinating part of it is? He's not even the greatest Packer quarterback of all time. Right?
He might be third on the list.
That's a different radio show.
Right? Third? I bet you could argue that he's Bart Starr.
I'm going to disagree with you 100%.
Really?
I think he's better than Brett Favre. I think he's better than Bart Starr.
Well, for me to say better than Bart Starr, even comparison would be folly.
Yeah,
right?
The two eras are too hard to compare.
Different style, but
he's better than Brett Favre. He's better than Brett Favre.
Oh,
he's better than Brett Favre.
Oh boy, it depends on how you want to define better. And again, that's like three more parts of this podcast.
I would take Brett Favre if I had to win it all.
Now that's a different conversation.
I'd take Brett Favre over Aaron Rodgers.
That's a different conversation because you talk about grittiness and a one-game scenario kind of thing.
And we're splitting hairs here.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
No, it's a good conversation.
Right. Favre has almost right now. Rodgers won't even come close to Favre's touchdown passes when his career's over. I don't think.
Maybe not.
Probably not.
No, Rodgers won't play that long.
Favre's second all time at 508.
Well, if he wants $35 million against the cap every year, he's not going to have any wide receivers to throw to anyway. So it doesn't mean
there you go.
Matter.
Right.
But the point is, he's being creative. I don't know how much justification it's going to have at the end of the day. I think he should just look at Matt Ryan's contract and add couple $1 million and say hell with it, because Matt Ryan's contract is just fine. It works for the Falcons. It works for him. I don't know why we're splitting hairs, with all this the nonsense, but it's interesting from a contract standpoint. It's maybe a little progressive. Maybe this gets us, to another level with player control and things like that. I like the ownership stake. I think that's got some legs, but it's just interesting. I don't think anything is going to come down to it when the contract actually gets signed.
All right, how many more quarterback notes do we have here? Because I have.
We got one more.
Fire
we got
away.
one more quarterback note.
Fire it away.
Well, one of the guys we're going to talk about through Hard Knocks. We've been pronouncing his name wrong his entire career. Tyrod.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor. It's not Tyrod Taylor. Hey, listen, this is not the NHL. How do we change your name
I don't know.
this far into it? So
then that's on him if he hasn't corrected anybody for the first 8 years of his career.
I agree with you 1,000%.
Right.
He's too nice of a guy to correct people.
Yeah. And guess what? After about 6 weeks, we won't have to worry about saying his name anymore anyway.
But you haven't told you never told the Bills crack PR department, hey, my name's Tyrod.
Whatever.
They never asked. Come on.
Whatever. All right. But the point being there is, and again, my instincts tell me let's relax. It was one week of preseason, but people in New York are already nuts about Sam Darnold being the starter. Mayfield. So the topic that you want to address is what are the money factors going to be involved in some of these decisions about whether Rosen, Allen, Darnold, and Mayfield are going to take over?
Well, it's sort of a smooth transition away from Rodgers, right? Because he's sort of the poster boy for all this, isn't he?
Yeah.
Wasn't he the last first-round pick to sit on his butt for a few years?
In all this.
Yeah, right. So, and look how well it's worked out.
Yeah, right. But that was it was a different era. It was a different circumstance. It's rare that a team as good as the Packers were get a quarterback in the first round like they did. I know what you're saying. I just think it's a bad comparison because it's such an outlier.
I disagree. I've heard this a lot, and I disagree. Yes, none of these teams are good, right? The Jets are terrible, maybe better. The Browns were the worst team in the history of football last year. The Cardinals, I don't know, maybe in the middle somewhere with the Josh Rosen situation. Here's the thing, though. The rookie wage scale was put in place to make more Aaron Rodgers. It was put in place to limit the amount of money those draft picks got so that teams wouldn't feel pressured into having to play those guys right out of the gate. And it hasn't worked. Right? Yeah. Because teams said, nah, we're paying him $5 million, he's going to play. And that's where we are with Mayfield, right? Mayfield's getting $6 million or something this year, in terms of base salary. He looks good after, 7 snaps in a preseason game, and, we're all freaking out. But there's got to be some validity to it. There's got to be people sitting around a table right now, especially in Arizona, right, where Sam Bradford's got $20 million guaranteed.
That's the only one of these where you have a big money veteran.
Right. $20 million guaranteed, $15 million this year.
None of those other ones are paying their veterans ridiculous money like that.
Well, Tyrod's up there. Tyrod's getting some money.
$16 million?
Yeah, Tyrod's getting 16. I mean, McCown's $10 million guaranteed. They're all $10 million plus. I mean, it's not something that the problem is the Jets and the Browns still have a lot of cap space. So, from a financial standpoint, it's not that much of a dent.
Right. Doesn't matter.
But there's still got to be a conversation, right? If Tyrod Taylor's playing as good as he is, I'm not even saying it.
Tyrod
Taylor is playing as well as he has throughout the offseason, as we've heard. And he's worth $16 million. Is there any conversation to be had does the money even come into the conversation this time of year when we're talking about the week 1 starter?
I don't think so.
Not at all.
For the reasons that you just laid out.
Not even Sam
Two
Bradford.
of the teams don't really care because they have too much cap room. The Cardinals wouldn't have done what they did to get Sam Bradford because they knew they were going to draft a quarterback likely anyway.
There's no regret. There's no regret.
Well, I would hope not. Then why did you do it then?
I guess that's where I'm talking here.
Yeah, I think the team that have the insurance policy of the veteran quarterback.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about, blow your socks off veteran quarterback. We're not talking about Aaron Rodgers here. We're talking about guys that you hope your rookie beats him out, right?
Bradford's the number 1 overall from 20.
Yeah, but the guys had a suitcase packed every other year.
Yeah, I
right?
mean, he's had a nice career, but not. I mean, he's a mid-level guy, and part of that is because you never know whether he's going to be healthy. When he's healthy and he plays great, he's probably a top 10 quarterback, but that rarely happens.
If your rookie quarterback that you drafted can beat these players out, that's a great scenario for your football team, right? And it's validation of the draft pick.
But, Kevin, I know what you're saying, but the parameters that go into beating him out aren't always about the performance.
Correct.
Which is where you're going with all of this.
That's
right.
Because, again, there's a reason why only 2 first-round picks since 2007 have not started a game their rookie year. There's too much pressure. You don't draft these guys to not play them.
I look at the Arizona situation especially, and I see Aaron Rodgers all over that. You've got kind of a gunslinging Josh Rosen, right, who might have to grow up a little bit into that role, right? I mean, that's all we've heard about the guy.
Sure.
And maybe he's good enough. I think Aaron Rodgers was good enough out of Cal, don't you think, to jump into that lineup?
Many thought so, yes.
Yeah, but you had Brett Favre ahead of him.
That's right.
Right.
But you've got Sam
Not
Bradford.
Sam Bradford.
Well, Sam Bradford was a top 5 quarterback before he got hurt.
But you can't think that way. You can't.
You will win no argument telling me Sam Bradford and Brett Favre are the same guy.
Me neither.
I'm not going there.
Okay, all right.
I'm saying.
That's why I'm saying the Aaron Rodgers is such an anomaly. I mean, the anomaly was you had a Hall of Fame quarterback still playing at a high level, and combined with a guy who inexplicably dropped, and you take him 24th overall when you never thought that was going to be where you were going to go. So you're like, well, okay, let's just play this, keep this guy around until we need him.
Well, let's hope Sam Bradford actually talks to Josh Rosen, right? Because stories were
true. Yes.
Favre never talked to Rodgers, right?
Yep.
All right, let me throw this out as sort of a cap here. Does Josh Rosen play a week in 2018?
Yes.
Yes, because
But why?
Because Sam Bradford won't stay healthy.
Oh, that's the only reason.
Well, no, I'll say this because the Cardinals, won't win. And the losing record, then you move on to your future.
To me, you only sign Sam Bradford to play in 2018. He's the quarterback
for the whole year.
The whole year. This is going to be Aaron Rodgers version 2.0.
If they're eliminated from the playoffs, Mike,
Sam Bradford is not Josh McCown. He's not.
I know,
that's
but
not that.
But what I'm saying is, if the Cardinals, when they're eliminated from playoff contention, Rosen goes in. Because if you're not going to make the playoffs, and let's say it's week 13, they're eliminated, why the hell would you start Sam Bradford for the final 3 games? You play Rosen.
And I think the other factor in all this, too, as we compare other quarterbacks in other generations, and I think this was my overriding thought on watching all 4 of those guys play well this weekend, quarterbacks are so much more prepared for the NFL than they ever have been before. The quarterback process from high school on is so much different. The private quarterback gurus, the Jordan Palmers, I mean, that didn't really exist 10 years ago. It does now, and the fact that the college offense has become closer to the NFL offense means the leap is not as large as it used to be.
Well, no, see, I think they're both factors. I think coaches have become wiser, and so if I'm going to play this guy, I'm not going to ask him to do things he can't do.
Same thing,
right?
Yeah, I'm not going to force a guy to run my NFL veteran offense,
right?
If I'm going to play him.
Yes, yeah, the coaching they've gotten smarter. Right.
I guess my point here is I still don't understand the Sam Bradford signing. If you knew you had the draft spot to get a guy like that, right?
Oh, I understand it. I don't think they knew which quarterback they were going to get, and I don't think there was any. I think it mattered to them. Yes, I think it mattered to the Cardinals.
Well, and I think regardless of who it was going to be, I don't think any team wants to start that rookie from week 1. So you want to have another option.
I think the Cardinals thought they were getting Allen, who needed the most work. And, by all scouting reports coming into it, I think they thought they were getting Allen. And when Rosen came to him, they're like,
well, weren't there rumors that the Bills were chasing Bradford? So maybe it was exactly the same thinking on the other end.
It could be,
right.
So
that's exactly where I was going here, is that it seems as though those 2 teams were aligned right from the get-go with this whole situation. I don't have a need for Bradford on my team if I'm the Arizona Cardinals. That's my point here. If your point is correct, and Rosen will eventually play this year, then he should play from week 1 because that team is not a 12-win team, right? Is this a gift to Larry Fitzgerald to make sure he gets his 80 catches this year so he can walk off into the sunset?
Maybe.
Because that's not worth $15 million guaranteed. Sam Bradford should be on the trade block right now. In my opinion, he should be on the trade block right now if that's the case. Because none of this discussion has gotten me to the point of where it's going to be totally fine for the Bradford-Rosen situation to work out the same way that the Mayfield-Taylor situation works out. They're different teams. They're totally different teams, in my opinion. There's no discussion with Mayfield, right? There's no discussion. He's not going to start week 1, right?
No.
No way.
No.
No way.
But I would say he starts before week 8.
I think Sam Darnold starts week 1.
I can see that.
And I think so. And and they're going to trade Bridgewater. Is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
By
the way, did you see Hackenberg's first 2 passes at Eagles camp were picked
no good.
off?
Yeah, no good. No good.
I don't know why I'm laughing at this guy's misfortune.
Yeah, no good. Speaking of, that's something to keep an eye on for you out there. Carson Wentz not looking good yet. He came out
pushing it a little early, isn't he?
He came out and said week 1 is maybe a no.
Right.
So
which I don't. That's no surprise to me, right?
But his Foles going to be healthy.
Yeah.
People are saying Foles might not be healthy either, so look out there.
Interesting.
Speaking of quarterbacks.
All right, we have beaten quarterbacks and defensive linemen to death here, so let's talk about another sport.
Well, do we want to talk about another sport now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's talk about basketball, right?
Yeah,
all right, because quickly we'll end on basketball and a contract of note. One we've talked about in the past couple of weeks, Carmelo Anthony, and it finally happened. He has been moved from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he's going to be Houston Rocket. But Mike, explain how he's a Rocket and who's paying him actually.
How many teams is this now for Carmelo?
All right.
5.
Well, this will be that'll actually play for. That he's actually going to play for. It's 4, right?
4.
Denver, New York, Oklahoma, and Houston.
Right.
But he was an Atlanta Hawk for 5 days. And that's the most interesting part of this. All right, that's the most interesting.
And if you
part
bought
of
a
this.
Carmelo,
that's about as long as you want to be an Atlanta Hawk.
And if you bought a Carmelo Anthony Atlanta Hawk jersey,
well, you saw they sent him one, right?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Did they send him one?
They sent him a jersey, and he signed it, and that is going to be a phenomenal piece of memorabilia somewhere.
Wow.
So they're playing into this. I mean, the Instagrams and the tweets out there have been hilarious surrounding his Hawks tenure.
Show up on Hall of Fame night next to Neek.
I think the Hawks are considering like a Carmelo Anthony day, like a giveaway and
bobblehead.
It's just going to be phenomenal.
Good for them.
They're treating this well.
Paul, you should get that jersey for your collection.
No, I'm sticking with the Syracuse one.
All right. Anyhow,
but the nuts and bolts here are that the Hawks are taking a $25 million cap hit on Carmelo Anthony this year. Okay.
Why?
And that's real life.
Why?
All right. So they traded for him. They got rid of a couple of guys they clearly didn't want, in their short-term future here to do it. And I think Oklahoma City did pretty well. I mean, honestly, they did immensely well to get rid of Anthony and that money, and to get a couple of actual players to go around the Westbrook George situation out there. Look at Atlanta's got the room. They're going to be the worst team in basketball again. So they can do this kind of thing, and hopefully that the draft pick they acquired and some of the pieces they got back are going to be worth their time going forward. But this is an interesting way for Carmelo Anthony to kind of finish the career out. He is on the veteran minimum now with Houston, which everybody expected.
So
to happen.
did they trade him to Houston or to get released?
They cut him. So Atlanta cut him, and that's what I mean. The dead money is $25 million this year. He's going to get $8.5 million cash from Atlanta over the next 3 years. No matter what happens, no matter where else he goes. And he's on the veteran minimum at $2.4 million in Houston. So he goes to arguably the second best team in basketball for chump change, but he's doing just fine elsewhere. And, lots being made about his role there. I don't know what kind of role he's going to have in Houston. He barely had a role in Oklahoma City.
I guess he's coming off the bench for Houston, right?
But that's a heck of a depth player for a good team, and it's definitely something to watch for the 2018
I'm sure
season.
he thinks his role is pass me the ball every single time so I can shoot.
Right?
Yeah.
Still, no matter what.
Yeah.
But the end game for Carmelo is still pretty good. He's going to make $255 million. I'm assuming this is his last contract. I guess he could come back in 2019. We'll see how it goes. But assuming this is it, and the $25 million from Atlanta and the $2.4 from Houston is it, $255 million in 16 seasons. That's
what's his winning percentage?
Second all time. Yeah, that's not a good number.
Yeah,
not a good number.
The Sixers were also involved in that trade, and Keith Van Horn was traded, right? As part of this deal.
Keith Van Horn hasn't played in like 20 years.
No, but he's been it's like the most. Isn't Keith Van Horn's contract like the most traded contract?
That's something to look up. I like that.
I think it is.
That's something to look up.
All right, we'll do that for next podcast.
Right.
All right, that's going to do it for the SpotTrack.com podcast. Make sure you do a couple of things. Oh, yeah.
Let me get a plug in.
Yes,
in.
all right.
We just recently launched our NFL fantasy contest at SpotTrack.com. This is a fun little contest. It's free. It's sort of complicated. But you got a unique twist because of it, right? So it's one player from every NFL team you draft. Okay. 4 quarterbacks, 8 running backs, 12 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, 2 kickers, 2 defenses, right? So across the board, you pick one from each NFL team. We're using the real salary caps. We combine salary caps from all the defensive players for your defense. We run an average on that. So everything's in real time. So, you draft Tom Brady, you get his $22 million cap hit. The object is obviously to have the most fantasy points with the lowest salary cap, and we do a value mathematical equation on that, and we'll track that throughout the entire regular season. So this thing runs all 16, 17 weeks of the regular season, totally free. It's live on SpotTrack.com right now, and we're hoping to get plenty of people signed up.
All right, so make sure you do that. Also, make sure you sign up for the premium subscription at SpotTrack.com and download the app and rate us on iTunes.
That's a long list of stuff
homework
to do. Yes,
there's a lot of ands there for sure. I do believe Keith Van Horn 6 teams. If I got that right, hang on. He played. He was traded on draft night. By the way, selected second overall in 97.
By the Nets, right?
Sixers. Traded to the Nets on draft night. So he's technically a Sixer, a Net, a Knick, a Buck, a Maverick, and the Sixers. So unbelievable. And I believe after he retired, he was traded a couple times because his contract was still,
That's awesome.
on the thing. So anyway, we'll look that up in more detail for the next SpotTrack.com podcast. For Mike Giannetti and Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening.